So we've got to read out this ridiculous statement from Coutts. I'm going to call it ridiculous because it is. But this is what they say. It is not Coutts' policy to close customer accounts solely on the basis of legally held political and personal views.
My request for data shows me this November meeting of the Coutts Wealth Reputational Risk Committee. The committee did not think continuing to bank Nigel Farage was compatible with Coutts, given his publicly stated views that were at odds with our position as an inclusive organisation.
It is not Coutts' policy to close customer accounts solely on the basis of legally held political and personal views.
While it is accepted that no criminal convictions have resulted, oh, that's nice of them, commentary and behaviours that do not align to the bank's purpose and values have been demonstrated.
It is not Coutts' policy to close customer accounts solely on the basis of legally held political and personal views.
They say the values NF actively and publicly promotes, champions, do not align with the banks. He is considered by many to be a disingenuous grifter, really, and is regularly the subject of adverse media. The view is that NF has not broken any law, has the right to free speech, oh, that's nice of them, and is polite to staff.
It is not Coutts' policy to close customer accounts solely on the basis of legally held political and personal views.
They also add, a decision to exit may result in NF using his platform on GB News social media to air his grievances.
Hi, it's me again, and yeah, escalating somewhat, this Nigel Farage thing, isn't it? And it's that last thing that Nigel said there in that clip, look, a decision to exit may result in Nigel Farage using his platform on GB News / social media to air his grievance. You know, they would have known that by closing his accounts, he was going to kick off a little bit on social media and definitely mention it on GB News. But I don't think Coutts could have known that it was going to go as far as it has. I mean, you got Rishi Sunak mentioning it now on Prime Minister's Questions yesterday. It's escalated somewhat, and Nigel's been a bit cagey about it, but it looks like he might be taking some kind of legal action for defamation as well. Though the notes in this, if you haven't read them, I think they were published in the Daily Mail, but I think Nigel's published them as well, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. But they said they were going to wait until he'd paid his mortgage off, and then they were going to exit him. So he was all right to be with them while they were earning a few quid off him. But as soon as they stopped earning a few quid off him, out the door you go. I mean, what kind of commercial decision is this? You know, I'm sure Coutts have a lot of customers who have a lot more money than Nigel Farage. But Nigel comes across as a successful businessman. He's got a limited company. I'm sure he turns over a fair few quid in it. What kind of commercial decision is, yeah, we don't want this successful man's money. That's a commercial decision, is it? And Nigel's not the only, I mean, it's been going on a while. Look, if I go back here, look, I got an article from May 2020 in This Is Money. NatWest shut our accounts out of the blue and refuses to tell us why. The bank customers who insisted they're victims of a Kafkaesque injustice. And as you know, there's a few other politically exposed people, shall we say, that have had similar treatment from their banks. What kind of world do we live in where your political views or what you believe stops you accessing basic banking services? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Is this just a precursor for, you know, if everyone kicks off enough about this, the banks were already part owned by the government anyway, a lot of them were, we'll come to that in a minute. Is this just a way to backdoor in the CBDC, and because then your bank will be the government, that's who you'll be banking with? And then you've read a lot about that, I'm sure, some of the things that come out about it, where they can put a time limit on your money or decide where you spend your money. Like if you get benefits, for instance, they can stop you spending that on alcohol and cigarettes. Maybe a good thing, maybe it's a free country, you should be able to spend it on what you want to spend it on. All right. Is this the precursor? Is this the precursor for that? Because you've got to remember, we bailed NatWest Group out. Look, it says down here, look. In 2008, NatWest, previously called RBS, was teetering on the brink of collapse and secured a £45.5 billion rescue deal and remained 50% owned by the taxpayer until, yeah, I think we're down to, is it 38.5% owned now? But £45.5 billion quid divided by today's population, which is more than it was back then of the UK. That's £675 per person in the UK. It was probably a bit more back then because there was a slightly lower population in the UK, wasn't there? So we're all stakeholders in RBS. So what can we do about it? What can we do about it? I mean, do we pull out, if you've got an RBS, if you've got a NatWest account? Probably not with Coots, I would imagine. I don't think I'd ever qualify for a Coots account. Not that I blooming want one now. But if you have something in the NatWest group, do you move it elsewhere? I mean, I don't bank with the NatWest group. If I did, I probably would move it. But what if the whole country moves it and people move their mortgages away from them and stuff like that as a political move? We'd have to bail them out again, wouldn't we? And why did we bail out all the banks in the first place? You know, surely if you can't survive, you go down, someone else takes your place. That's the free market economy, right? The strongest survive. Survival of the fittest and all of that. There was something, I mean, I've looked into economics the last few years. I've read a lot of economics books. I'm quite fascinated by it all. And one of the things I stumbled across, which I found absolutely fascinating, maybe some of you have heard of it out there, is Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney. It's a web series, and it's blooming brilliant. Well, the early ones are. He's let himself go a bit in the later ones, but he's getting old, bless him. This is a little clip from that, because I didn't know this. Many people think, me included, back in the day, that money comes from the government. New money that comes into the system comes from the government. But it's not true. It's a couple of minutes long, but it's very interesting. Have a look at this. I know it talks about US dollars, but all central banks work the same, and all the banking systems in the world in most of the first world countries all work the same. Look at this.
Now, this may come as a shock to you, but when you deposit your currency with the bank, you're not actually depositing it into an account to be safely held in trust for you. Instead, you're actually loaning the bank your currency, and within certain legal limits, they can do with it pretty much anything they please. This includes gambling in the stock market and loaning it out, at a profit, of course. If you deposit $100 in your account, the bank can legally take $90 of it and loan it out without telling you. The bank must hold $10 of your deposit in reserve just in case you want some of it. These reserves are called vault cash. But why does your bank account still say you have $100 if the bank has stolen $90 of it? Because the bank left IOUs it created, called bank credit, in its place. These are nothing but numbers that the banks type into their computers. So now there is $190 in existence. Now, the reason people take out loans from the banks is to buy something. They're going to buy a house or a car or something like that. So the borrower takes the $90 that the bank loaned to him from your account, and he pays the seller of the item. But then the seller deposits that currency into his account, and his bank loans out 90% of that and leaves bank credit numbers in its place. So now there's $271 in existence. This process repeats and repeats until under a 10% reserve ratio, an initial deposit of just $100 can create up to $1,000 of bank credit, all backed by $100 of vault cash, just 10%. But as I said, reserve ratios vary wildly. On some deposits, it's 10%, on others, it's 3%, and on some forms of deposits, reserve requirements are 0. The result is that the expansion of the currency supply by the banks is far greater than even this example would lead you to believe. This is where the vast majority of our currency supply comes from. In fact, 92 to 96% of all currency in existence is created not by the government, but here in the banking system. Now, massive amounts of currency spewing into society may at first sound like a fun idea. That is, until you remember one of the most important hidden secrets of money from episode 1, that the prices of everyday goods and services act as a sponge on an expanding currency supply. The more currency we have, the more prices rise. This is where inflation comes from.
It's a brilliant web series, by the way. It's very fascinating to watch. I suggest you, I'll put a link below. Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney. But he does say in there, 92 to 96% of all currency in existence is created not by the government, it's created by the banking system. It's probably a bit lower than that now because this was filmed before quantitative easing 57 or whatever it is we're up to now. But it is interesting that all that money going into existence is what causes inflation. We couldn't bail the banks out because they're generating all that money into the system. That's where inflation comes from. It comes from the banking system. One of his best examples, he says there, is if you have a quid, he calls it, if you have a quid and it's the only quid in existence and you lend it to a mate and the mate promises to pay you back your quid plus a quid interest, where does the other quid come from? It has to be borrowed into existence, doesn't it? And then to pay that back, you've got to borrow more money. And that's where all the money is. It's a fascinating web series. So we can't just stop banking, can we? We can't move away from the banks. We can't, they'll just get bailed out again and again and again. And there's talk now about banks being able to monitor your social media and stuff like that. You should be able to say what you want to say and say. What I would say is I don't have any social media accounts in my own name. I have one, I think. Yeah, my Facebook account is in my own name. But I don't really post anything on there apart from my expert movie reviews. There's a couple of them. I tend to do that a couple of times a week. Every other social media account I have is in an email address that doesn't use my name, my address, or my main phone number to do the two-factor on it. And they're not in my own name. And I have quite a few because I have work master accounts that I have to have and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I would suggest is if you're using social media, Twitter, you got your Facebook posts set as public. Yeah, you don't want to be doing any of that in your own name. No public social media in your own name because this could come to you. It's a scary situation. And it's happening to more and more people and RBS seem a bit out of control. And the only way the government can control it is buying them back in or eliminating the banks from the system completely, which is the central bank digital currency that they want to implement. What was that thing that one of the Rothschilds said once? Because they own the Bank of England, don't they? What was it? Yeah, there it is. In 1815, it was Nathan Mayer Rothschild. He made his famous statement, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls the British money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply." There you go. I think that says it all now. It was in 1815. That was before social media. What do you think about all of this? Because as a taxpayer, you are still a shareholder in RBS, pretty much. Right? You don't get any of the dividends from it, but you're still a stakeholder in RBS. Should they be able to behave like this? Should the government allow? Is the government just going to take over and do CBDCs? It's a scary situation. But what I would suggest is what I said: don't run any public social media accounts in your own name. No good can come from you being tied to stuff. It just can't. I mean, you can get really serious with it and start using VPNs or Tor. I wouldn't go that far with it. Just, I don't use my real name on here. I don't use my real name on social media. And it gives me an air of anonymity. I'm sure the powers that be could find me, find out who I really am if they wanted to. But I've kept the anonymity longer than I thought I would on it. And Hidden Secrets of Money, have you seen it? Let me know if you watched it. If you haven't, hit the link below and go and watch it. There's I think 6 or 7 episodes. The later ones are a bit pony, to be honest. But the early ones are amazing. So good. And he'd done it all out of his own pocket, travelling the world to film it. And yeah, they are. They're very good. Well worth a watch. You'll learn a lot. I had to watch it as part of a little economics course I was doing a couple of years ago. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button, other buttons, all of that stuff people say at the end of videos. And I'll see you in the next one, whenever that will be. Ta-da.